We were like, well, what are you coming in to finalize? And they're like, insurance. And we're like, okay, hold on.
Crazy.
So if you move this to the top of the funnel, there's a lot of things that now happen, not just removing that friction, but also enhancing the dealer customer interaction. Think about what happens if you do this earlier in the process.
We are recording. Hello, Cage community, and everybody watching this and listening in. I'm excited for today's show because this came from a conversation that I had recently with a great friend and colleague, and I consider him a brother as well, Scott, who you all will meet here in a second. But I'm always looking for something that helps evolve the experience, but most importantly, evolve our automotive industry and create things frictionless, not just for customers, but for the employees as well. It's a connected experience. So today, the interview and the conversation that we're having is going to be with a company called Modives, and I'm going to let the two gentlemen introduce themselves here in just a minute. But just want to take a moment to say thank you, enjoy this, and then after, towards the end, if you want to learn more, we'll give you some ways that you can stay connected. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and open it up. Who wants to introduce themselves first? Go ahead, and then we'll start getting into it.
Awesome. Yeah, I can go first. My name is Justin Silver, and I'm somewhat newer to the automotive industry, but have been connected, as I'm sure most people do, through their own life events, but also connected through the insurance industry, which is where my background comes from, in selling personal insurance and having prior run a dealership relationship between the insurance agency and the dealership. So really what we're up to here with Check My Driver is really at the intersection of dealerships and the insurance industry. So I'm super excited to be here. I'm the COO, and founder of Motives. And yeah, thank you.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Justin. All right, go ahead, Scott.
Yep. So my name is Scott Trainer. I know most of you guys in the industry. I have heard about me one way or another. I'm the great Canadian that came down to Florida. I've always been in the auto industry. Started 19 years old. Worked most of my career in dealerships and came down here on the dealer partner side. Duran and I have been friends for a while. I've learned a lot from Duran, and I definitely follow everything he does. And now I am the director of auto for the automotive division here at Motives, really bringing a whole new solution that hasn't been in the industry yet, and we're excited to tell you guys all about it.
Yeah, and let's go at it right there. So thank you too for your introductions. Let's talk about why the solution was created in the first place. So obviously Motives, you saw a problem, but talk to us about what the problem you all saw in the industry, and then talk about why you created this solution and why you all decided to do it when you did it, because I'm not sure how long you all have been doing this for, but typically it kind of like grows and evolves to it. But give us some background there.
Yeah, I mean, we work in a couple different places, but auto is where the genesis for the idea behind Motive started. And my co-founder and CEO Fred Waite, sitting in an auto dealership, like many of us have, in that purgatory moment, as he calls it, just waiting and waiting and waiting. There's so much time that it takes in the dealership, and there's lots of reasons why there's this wait time and friction. But having also been an insurance guy, he's sitting there when the moment came and someone said, "I need to check your insurance." And he's like, "Well, what do you actually do with that?" Just out of curiosity. And they said that they were going to go call the insurance company, and he was like, "This is crazy." And so he knows that those call centers and this was post COVID, and call center staff is hurting, that those calls used to take 15 minutes, now taking 30 minutes. And he's like, no wonder I'm sitting here for so long. He's like, oh my God, there's got to be a better way. And there wasn't. And so that was the genesis behind Check My Driver, which provides a solution to make insurance authentication and verification easy during this critical moment. And then as we got into it, we started learning that it's not just when you're going into before you go into the F&I office. There are other moments within the automotive industry, but specifically within the dealership, where people are asking customers to prove that they have insurance. And so that spawned the Check My Driver solution.
Wow. No, that's good. So talk to me about what I was writing down as I was hearing you speak is how does this flow into the dealers that do a lot of business online? Because we know a lot of customers start online, but I'm starting to see more and more dealers that I'm connected with doing business out of state, outside of 200-mile radius. So what are you seeing with how Motives fits into that system and that process?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, the current state, as I just kind of hit on, it's analog, it's paper.
Yeah.
Show me an ID card, I make a phone call, and then I got to go key stuff in. And once we automated this process and created a digital transaction connecting directly to the insurance companies, allowing the transaction to be performed by the consumer and or the customer directly without the dealership having to be in the loop, all of a sudden the whole solution became digital. So as customers go top of funnel, whether they're coming in for service, quite frankly, and making an appointment, or they're trying to buy a car and they're expressing interest on on a dealership page or in an aggregator marketplace, at that moment, before they arrive at your dealership, the opportunity now exists, much like a soft credit pull, to say, hey, before you come in, you can take care of this thing, which will further reduce the wait time, the friction, the back and forth to the car. So even though in a lot of cases we're hearing someone's going to come in to finalize their paperwork, we were like, well, what are you coming in to finalize? And they're like, insurance. And we're like, okay, hold on.
Crazy.
So if you move this to the top of the funnel, there's a lot of things that now happen, not just removing that friction, but also enhancing the dealer customer interaction. Think about what happens if you do this earlier in the process. One, like the soft credit pull, I know my customer better. I know their credit situation. Two, I know if they have insurance, how much insurance and what kind. So if you need certain coverage limits because you're going to lease or finance, or you're in a different type of transaction where you need to have full coverage, well, you'll already know whether this customer, what their situation is, and you'll also know what other drivers are in their household. You'll know what other vehicles are in their household. And now, when you come to deal shaping, you're in a much better position to remove some additional, if it's not friction, it's agita moment when someone's trying to size up your trade in or whatever other cars you have. You now can come proactive and say, ask them, hey, are you looking to turn in your 1999 Honda Accord, regardless of what car they showed up on the lot for, or are you looking to do this one? So it turns the conversation around and allows a dealership to be much more consultative in a new kind of way that they weren't, because as we looked into it, they waited till the end to ask for insurance because it took that time and they didn't want to spend the time. But now when it's instant verification, takes 30 seconds and the customer could have done it before they even arrived or as they are arriving, you getting that information, you now have a whole new set of data points that you could use to help you provide benefit and value to the customer. And by the way, cross sell them other things potentially as well.
So if so, the dealers, because when you said service, I'm like, man, that's huge. So the dealers that are using this for the service department, once they've hooked up one time, do you keep running it through Motives? So let's say the person comes back for a routine service, but they need a car, but then the next time they don't, but then the time after that, they do need a car again. What does the dealership do in that situation? Do they just log into a portal and run it through Motives again, or is it, walk me through that?
Yeah, so there's
Yeah.
two. So the question you ask has two kind of scenarios.
Okay.
One, if they need a car, one, it can be connected up to their system where it just gets triggered based on the reservation and whether a loaner is requested or not.
Okay.
Second, so if no loaner is requested, you don't have to run the process, and so it just wouldn't happen. But I think there's another point that you're hitting on, which is the customer experience of telling the dealer who their insurance company is, providing proof, if you will, doesn't actually have to happen again and again. So long as they maintain the same insurance company, that the dealer can automatically run that for the customer without even saying, hey,
Wow.
I need to ask you for proof. So that's the beauty. Whether you're loaning or not, once you've done it once, no matter what your first touch point with the dealer is, I guess I'll say it this way, and you've asked that customer the first time for their insurance, you don't have to ask them again. If for some reason their insurance is canceled or they've changed insurance companies, that's going to come back, and the customer will get a message from the system automatically that says, hey, we recognize your insurance has changed or is canceled. Please, reconnect your insurance, just like you do with your bank account. If you're working at one company and you have your 401k connected to your Chase bank account, and now you change jobs, and now your 401k company changes, or the company switches plans, and you got to want to reestablish it so you could see it in one view. It's the same kind of thing. So if you don't change anything, it's not like we're continually bombarding them. So you're actually reducing the amount of moments where you even have to ask customers to prove insurance. The system will just do it for you.
Oh, that's good. Scott, were you going to add something?
No, Justin covered pretty much exactly
Right.
everything.
No, it's good. Well, Scott,
He's right on it. No, obviously the ideal is then when, just to sum it all up, is when the customer is taking possession of the vehicle. That's the time, the first verification. Sometimes it happens even on the test drive. The dealers that want to be proactive and find out all these other data points are doing it even on the test drive point. So they have all that data at the beginning. But so let's say the day of sale is the first time that we do the verification. Now, for the whole course of that customer, like Justin said, as long as they didn't change insurance companies, you are able to re-verify that customer's insurance. So they're coming in for their first service in 6 months. Instead of them showing up and the advisors or the loaner department saying, okay, perfect, just wait, I'm going to call the insurance and verify. Here's your vehicle. What a great experience. They were able to show up, drop off their vehicle, pick up the rental, no friction.
That's good. So, Scott, I'll ask you this question then. It's kind of like a two-part, and then Justin, you can add in as well. But now, when you're talking to dealers before they have a company like yours, a solution like yours, excuse me, who is currently doing this on average when you're talking to dealers? Is it the F&I manager, sales? Is it the office manager? And then after a dealer signs up and partners, how does that system work then? Who primarily is in charge of setting that up moving forward to create the least amount of friction possible?
Yeah, well, every dealership has its own procedures. Obviously, they have their own ways of working. Most of the time, it is the finance manager calling right now. When you're looking at the franchise stores, the independents tend to have the salesperson calling ahead of time. So we can customize it and they can have different permissions within the store. But ideally is that anybody who would ask a customer for insurance would be set up in the system. And that way it's going to reduce the friction. It's not going to be, let me bring in this other person to verify the insurance. It would be everybody who would ever need to ask that have access to the portal.
Okay. And then and I guess that answers the next part, is it's customized to whatever the dealership wants. So I think that's
Yeah,
huge, because you see many times companies kind of have a fixed, this is how it's going to work moving forward, and then it creates friction within that store. So I love the
yeah.
fact that it's 100% customized.
Yeah, to expand on the customization a bit, aside from the franchise stores, certain lenders and independents have different minimums, or even when we're talking in the buy here, pay here space, which we actually have a whole different program, a whole different option for. They tend to have very set specifications on what they're looking, maximum deductibles, minimum coverages that may not be in the traditional stores. So they can configure for those specific parameters when we do the verification, because we're not only checking that it's active, we're making sure it's adequate based on what the lender or the store is looking for. So those are two checks we're doing. It's not just, okay, hey, perfect, it's active. No, the adequacy feature is just as important.
And that's probably the biggest differentiator between us and what might be deemed as alternatives in the market. There's this term verification, and it's this funny thing. It's been a big topic internally lately, and I love this is the opportunity to say it out to a target audience. Verification to us is it's like looking at the ID card. Or we just had a conversation recently. Like if you get pulled over on the side of the road and you flash up, you log into your app, your auto insurance app, and you show the police officer your insurance. Like, how does he know that's not a screenshot? that's like you just made up, you know? Like, so did he
Yeah.
verify? Is that verification? So if the data comes back, right? If the data comes back, even if I got it digitally, is it any better than that deck page that was printed out? It's like, our one of our colleagues, you says, do you let them print out their own credit reports? It's like,
Mm,
so, right? So you don't. And so what happens is even when the data comes back, it now has to be looked at. So others in the space will provide you the data. And now you still have a dealership personnel that you talked about. What does the change management look like?
yeah.
That dealer personnel, whoever's doing it or however they decide to set up and manage the process, doesn't have to have what I call tribal knowledge about the transaction type that I'm in, the situation and moment, the coverages for that state and or whatever, that deck page and where things look on the policy, on the ID card, where the agent information. They don't have to fumble with any of that stuff, know what questions to ask on the phone, key them into anywhere. Our system does, not just is it active, but is it adequate and is it accurate? So it knows, right? Imagine my wife comes in. I use this example all the time. It's just so my wife, Stacy, if she goes by Stacy, my insurance policy says Justin Silver at the top. She's listed as a driver as Anastasia. Her driver's license says Anastasi because it can't fit in New Jersey. And is this the same person? Right? And what our system knows is that by the rules of insurance, she's my wife. She's considered an insured, even though she doesn't show up in the insured block. And it knows to look at the driver listed on the policy. And by the way, where those drivers are listed and how they're represented is different in every insurance company. And there's hundreds of them across the country. Our system analyzes all of that. So just sending the data back to the dealer is not enough. We take it all the way to the end and actually do what, and this is the point that I'm starting on, is we're actually verifying. Someone else is giving you the data so you can verify. You
Right.
still have to verify. We actually verify for you. That's how we differentiate. Does that
Whoo.
make sense? I mean, I don't know. Do
No,
you,
it
do you have
does. It
thoughts on
does.
that?
It makes sense because it's kind of like the call before. I was on a call before, well, two calls before this one because Scott heard a little bit of that one. But two calls ago, there's a saying that I say, I want to like quote this: AI creates problems in most cases, and then humans come in and solve that problem. What I mean by that is I'm seeing a lot of dealerships that use like AI because they feel like it's really going to help them in service or sales or whatever. But what you'll find is that AI creates just as many problems because it creates more engagement. And now, if your team's not trained to handle it, you're kind of like you just created more problems for yourself. It'd be like running an AI campaign for service to win back customers. Well, if you do all that, but you don't have the internal infrastructure to handle that, then you actually created a problem. So it's kind of like what you're saying here. It's like if all you're doing is verifying or doing a little bit so that the dealers can just do more, or they're still going to do it, but maybe it's a little bit less time, you actually didn't really solve the problem. You almost created a new problem, but they still have to solve it. And so I like that this is actually a for real solution that a dealership can use. And a question that I have, I'm going to pose this to either one of you. Have you have you all heard exactly how much time on average it takes to verify insurance? Like what you've seen on average? Does anybody give that information? Do they say it's 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes? But has anybody covered that in across our industry before?
Yeah. So, I mean, and we know from the insurance company side because we've talked to the insurance companies about how long it's taking just them on their phone call
Mm-hmm.
with the dealers or and or the customer if they have to get them in the loop, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a without doing a change of vehicle, you're talking 15 to 30 minutes, and then if you have to change the vehicle, it's 30 to 45 minutes is the call center time associated with that verification. It's crazy. The time is and so what happens, and look, let's just call it what it is. In service, they're not calling. It's not. This is not happening. In the purchase, right? Because in the service, you don't have the financial institution generally sitting on the other side of you saying, I require you to verify. They're verifying for other reasons, and those reasons don't have them for a lot of reasons don't have them actually verifying or calling the insurance company. but in the purchase side, um, they are supposed to. And in some cases, we've seen attestation forms on the spot sheet, right? I
Mm-hmm.
called, I verified. There's actually a script we've seen in some of them that actually is what the dealer personnel is supposed to say to the insurance company because they get weird about sharing information, right? And then they sign, they check it off and they sign. But a lot of those calls are not happening because it
Let's be
takes
honest.
so long.
Coming from the dealer side, even service, they're supposed to call before giving a loaner. Now this is they're putting the liability. Now I remember one of the GMs, and then I asked, "Are you guys calling?" So on, checking. His answer was, "Well, I hope they are. They're supposed to be." I'm like, "All right, let's be honest. They're checking the box. They're not calling." He's
So
like, "Probably."
Duran, on that side, we've been talking as connected to the insurance industry, and it's why this is important. And how one of the other ways that we are different is while we've brought in some, like Scott, some great automotive talent into the business that really understand the dealership world.
Yeah.
This is an insurance. There's an insurance problem that's here. And so dealers also, we've been talking with some compliance folks in the work, in the automotive space that talk to dealers about compliance and liability and insurance and whatnot. And so one of the things that we've heard, even in service, is like, well, we have a garage policy, and so they just rely on that. So we are going to the insurance companies and talking to them and saying, do you know that these dealerships are not generally calling? And do you know that we're hearing a rebuttal that they're relying on their garage policies, like, and they know the reality of it. Obviously, they know, insurance companies know a lot, but now that there's a better solution and that it can be done, there's not an excuse for them not to necessarily be doing it. And so relying on your garage policy is not a reason to introduce risk into your business. I don't light a fire in the middle of my living room because I have a sprinkler system,
Yeah.
right? And so what the opportunity exists in the space, and one of the things that we're working to tackle is to help bring down the cost of insurance through risk management and loss prevention programs for dealerships where they can work with their brokers and with their carrier partners on proving that they are more they're less risky than others because they're taking these actions. Today, they don't have a method to truly prove that they're doing this, and even their current methods, when they are still flawed, as we talked about before.
Mm. Man, what I'm enjoying about this is, yeah, I mean, especially that last part you both touched on, is we're talking a lot about cost and we're talking about time savings and anything that's working well in the industry and that customers, of course, like to hear is how can we, help them either save money or most importantly, how can we help them save time? And so, a question I want to ask, especially from a dealer standpoint, and Scott, maybe you're seeing this, is who is using this information and this value that you all are bringing and using this almost as a marketing play or adopting this into their why buy? Like, is there anybody that have either of you seen that happening where since they are invested in customer experience by doing something like this, are they telling that story as how it makes the experience a little bit more frictionless with their store versus others?
Definitely the stores that are tech forefront. Anybody with a digital retail experience for their guests are on board 100%. We're in discussions with one of the larger independent, we won't name names just yet, but they're a big play on the digital purchase experience. So
Wow.
that is one of them. It's just, it was the missing piece in, like Justin said, everything else was digital.
Yeah.
Why were we still doing this manually? Why did we still have to call the insurance and have somebody email something, or some insurance companies are still faxing? Why are we doing that? So those are the dealerships that are really adopting it. The ones with big loaner programs, long-term test drive programs, are adopting it very quickly as well. And of
Yeah.
course, we've had a couple of large groups come on that are concerned about compliance. There's a compliance play that we haven't discussed yet, where, especially with the Cars Act that just came through, the data has to be secure. You cannot no longer have a salesperson just snap a picture of the customer's ID card on their cell phone. That it's no longer compliant. We actually worked with a store who even removed the customer's personal address and phone number from their ROs because the ROs sit out on the desk where other customers might see. They got it right away because they are on the forefront of being compliant. And we're going to see more and more of that roll out as the FTC and so on start cracking down on these things. So there's that benefit as well, other than just a better guest experience, better guest dealer experience, is keeping them compliant with the new laws.
Man, my marketing head. See, now I'm getting geeked because like if I'm a dealer listening to this, then what I'm hearing is like, okay, I've got an opportunity to be different. And so especially on maybe not on all opportunities that a dealership receives hearing this, but like specifically in my community, the cage community, what this is telling us is like, hey, we like the power of video. Video's massive. Like that's what's probably connected me to you all and how Scott and I got connected, right? It's content and video. But imagine a customer, say somebody like Justin is our avatar in this situation. He goes online, he's 2 states away, and he's looking at a couple different Highline vehicles. I'm not going to say manufacturers' names. And because the average customer normally looks at 3 or 4 different options online, but they typically go to like 1 to 1 point whatever dealerships they visit. So Justin at this point is really just eliminating people. He's like, who has the best deal and who can I save the most time with? In this situation, just imagine if you either had a pre-recorded video or a video that came from your finance manager or somebody that says, hey, we know that you might be looking at several options, but here's something that you can feel comfortable with as you move forward with us, is that your information is safe. We know that many times when you make large purchases, your data can go everywhere, your personal information, but at our store, we made it seamless from insurance to checking your financing. Everything is easy and it saves you time. To me, having that kind of video go out to customers that are looking to shop a different way, that's what I'm looking for. If I'm a dealer listening to this, is like, where's that edge? We're always looking for a marketing play. Like, what new AI tool can we get? What new marketing channel? What third party listings is going to save me a bunch of cars? But really, it's stuff like this conversation internally, doing things that make customers feel more secure when they buy. Because to Scott's point, I don't know who the larger dealer is, but I do know publicly traded groups, they don't play around with stuff like, you know what I mean? Like they cannot even take the risk of letting a picture go to a salesperson with insurance. But I see it a lot in CRMs where customers are willingly wanting to send out information sometimes to a rep, and a rep saying something like, yeah, just, I can't see the picture through the CRM, so email it here or text it here. And I'm like, guys, we cannot do that. Guys and ladies, we cannot do that because
People are
the
circumventing.
compliance is serious right now. Go ahead.
And in the dealership, there's a lot of circumventing what's being put in place.
Yeah.
In our system. Like we've seen, we don't have a print button at the end of the process, right? We have an API that can drop it right into the CRM or the DMS.
Oh, that's good.
But we don't have a print button, and not that someone couldn't print from their browser screen, but the reason we don't have a print button is because we've seen dealers go skirt the process. They go through all this digitally secure process, and then they print it back out and put it on the desk, and we're like, no. But I think the piece that you're hitting on, there was a stat out there, and I misquote it. It's not as important as what the exact number is that it was the majority of customers said that if their data was breached, what is the likelihood that they would return back to her? They would lose, in other words, lose confidence. And it was the majority of people. If there was a breach, they would not return back.
Yeah.
And so what you're talking about is flipping that on the head and saying, is not just talking the talk, but walking the walk and delivering the experience that actually is digitally safe and secure for them, but letting them know when they come in that the experience that they're onboarding, and at least take it's education, but you're also taking credit, to your point of, I think you said, differentiating yourselves from the competitors. There's a moment and a window where brand loyalty, and there's a lot of this going on right now, to establish that brand loyalty and to get a customer. What's the saying? Like, it's easier to sell a customer again than to get a new customer. Customer acquisition costs, when you're fighting this good fight, listen, if people can trust you, and I see all the consultants out that are out in the space that are trying to teach whether the sales folks in the dealership or the customer service personnel, about the trust. There's no better way to lose trust than to screw that part of it up and have their data leaked or breached. And I'll tell you, there are customers, and people are starting to get vocal. Look on Reddit. Just do a Google search on Reddit and some of these other types of forums out there. A customer goes in a dealership, and that dealer guy even asks someone to text message them their driver's license. Believe me, some people might use the term Karen, which is not politically correct or whatever else, and start trolling these people. But the reality is, they're right. You go and take that information. And all it takes is one of those people to start going online and saying, can you believe what my dealership is doing at the sales guy on his personal cell phone? Man, it's
I just and I'm going to bring it to a full circle on the other side of this as well, because everything is connected. Because now we're talking about compliance, and we're talking about marketing, we're talking about speed, we're talking about cost. But another big part of this is that employee experience factor. I it's been a minute, it's not a decade, but it's been a few years. But I can still remember what it's like having sales teams, because I was more in the area of contracts in transit, making sure that everything is smooth. And I would go up to the finance desk and say, "What's going on with this customer? Like, what do we need to do here? Like, the customer's still here. We're waiting to verify the insurance." And I'm like, "How long has this been going on? We're stuck. There's a hiccup. Something's going." And all I'm thinking of is, if I'm an employee, especially an employee that sells a lot of cars, like a high level one, the worst thing that you want to have is that hiccup in the process. Not so much that it's hurting the customer experience, but it's about, you've got two more cars that you need to sell. You've got other things that you need to do. It's 7 o'clock at night, right? Because we all know those customers that come in, your dealership closes at 8, they're going to come in at 7:55. You know what I mean? What system do you have in place to protect both the customer and employee when that situation happens? And that's where I see, because when this next generation comes in, when we're
yes.
trying to hire, like, I think of my son as I'm speaking to this, because he's 15, currently, as I say this. But I listen to him, and I watch how he engages and things that he does. But this next gen wants to come into organizations that have systems and processes and technology, or something that makes it easy on them and easy on the customer. This next generation is not going to want to come into an organization that has a lot of, like, old school tactics, and even having to, I couldn't imagine even my sons having to be on hold for 10 minutes with a company I could see him after, like, the 13th car deal. I'd be like, how's everything going, son? You loving to sell cars? Yeah, it's great. But man, Dad, it just takes so long to sell a car. It shouldn't take this long to sell one. But there's all these things. We've got papers everywhere. And one last thing before I turn it back to you all, I didn't know that this was really still going on. Like, me, but I was at a store like 2 weeks ago, and one of those compliance people was in the dealership walking around, and they were saying, this is I don't know the exact wording, but it was like they were pretty much
Violation.
saying that it was a routine visit. However, we will
Okay.
have agents that come by looking as customers to see if you have documents lying around in paper and stuff like that. And all I could think about is, like, why is it in 2024 we're still talking about so much of this? Like, why is it that there's so much paper that's still being used, and not enough tablets, not enough digital retailing matched to in-store retailing, and solutions like this being part of that whole experience? And it's interesting. And there could be tangible reasons why. I'm sure dealers listening to this could be like, maybe it's an API, maybe it's their DMS. I don't know what that thing is, but it's really unique to have a call like this, where it's bringing in different areas that can complement a store, but also keep them protected as well. Pretty
Yeah, I
cool.
Yeah,
mean,
I
the
know you
thing.
during the hours, but now let's think of the dealer that's selling the car after hours. Let's think of the dealer that needs to verify on a weekend when the
Yeah.
insurance broker, is closed. They're there at 6 o'clock. The insurance cabinet closed at 3. What do you do? So it's not
I
just
think
speeding up the process while they're open; it's facilitating when you can't reach the insurance.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
good.
and I think you were hitting on a point, and it brings back to that. So this guy hit on it earlier, but like the FTC Safeguard Act really saying, is it's new. It was June last year, right? And so they will make a point out of someone, and the fines are very hefty. And each incident of a fine, so if you're doing 200 cars a month, and however many customers data that you process through, that's potentially just 200 minimum, 200 potential violations in that one shot, and they're tens of thousands of dollars, these fines. And so you don't want to be made an example of. And there's a term that some of our compliance friends have used, called willful negligence. And so part
Mm,
of our mission from an education and helping the greater auto industry is to bring awareness. Obviously, we have a solution, and we are working, we are a for-profit business, but what Scott and I are out here doing, and the rest of our team, is to educate that there is a solution, and you need the full solution, not just returning the data back. You need something that's going to go and verify, because then you're left either printing it out, having it up showing up on people's screens, or people making phone calls, because it's not just a piece of paper on the desk. That Safeguard Act says verbal communication of customer PII is considered necessary under the same protections. And so you got to be behind a closed door and not an open forum. There's a lot of complexity to being in compliance, which we just eliminate through this process. And so, you know, now that something's out there, and as they become aware, and we're going to be working with lobbyists and other folks and whatnot to help the greater industry understand that there's a solution. So these folks should be looking for, dealers to be embarking on hopefully our solution, but solutions like it. I'm assuming competitors are going to emerge into the market.
that's good. That's real good. So I want to, we'll kind of wrap this up, but before we do, I want to ask another question that I feel maybe a dealer could be thinking is like, if they don't move forward and do something like this with the motives, that has the full solution, what is something that you would at least encourage them to do in the meantime, or if there is one, but like, what is a good option that you see that keeps them safe, can save them the most amount of time? Um, but what would you leave them with in terms of that? Because I know, Justin, you kind of touched on it a little bit, but what do you guys think?
Well, I think you just got to just eliminate. Look at the points of the this process. Everything, it's about a
Mm,
process. Take the process of verification in the various moments that exist within your dealership, and it's different in different places. We talked about service versus in the sales process. Look at those processes and think about how you're getting it, and make sure that any data that's being transmitted is done encrypted, what they call as in transit and at rest. So make sure it's encrypted end to end, that it's not ending up on any personal devices, that it's you're
mm,
not printing things out and leaving them around, and that any phone calls, if you're going to make them, are being done in a closed, walled off room. And I would walk around and have a program where you're doing, so that you don't wait for the, I think it was secret shopper you were hitting on, for the
yeah,
secret shopper to show up, right? You should put that compliance process in your own place and just check your own. It's auditing your own self and your own process. Because right now, pretending like you're doing something that you're not, like, do it. That's number one. Because a lot of times they're not even making the calls. They're not doing verify, because there's still a liability issue. I go back to this thing, and this is probably a good wrap up for us too. Is like, if you're not going to do it right, I keep asking myself, like, why are you, like, they're not calling, then why are you even asking? Like, why buy? You know what the most frictionless process for your consumer and your staff is?
just a
Just stop doing it. Because if you're not
just a
going to do it
video.
right, why do it? But if you're going to do it right, I net I would say, is put an audit process in place. Assign somebody to be responsible for this process, and to do regular periodic audits to make sure people are following the proper controls.
That's good, Scott. I'm gonna ask you this question then, because Justin answered that one. I mean, he might drop that one, so I'm gonna ask you. In the next 3 to 5 years, what does this retail business look like on the variable and fixed side? What's in your crystal ball? And I'm gonna help. I'm gonna go a little bit more specific because that's way too wide. With how customers shop, you know, the way that they do business. What do you see 3 to 5 years? What does that look like?
It's definitely going to be an online digital. I know that some OEMs are even pushing for to eliminate the franchise model. I don't think that'll be completely, but it will be a much more digital process. Some OEMs already have the pickup and from home, or the digital delivery, and they'll ship the vehicle to your house. I mean, shout out to Brian Kramer, who 2 years ago delivered the first car in the metaverse. I mean, it was very early, but there will be, we're not going to be metaverse in 3 to 5 years, but it will be a much more digital experience. And just like people are now used to already uploading their driver's license when it comes to verifications, insurance is just the next natural state. But whether it be sales, it's going to be more of a customer experience center, maybe more of a Tesla model,
Yeah.
but the whole transaction will be more of a digital transaction. And this is the perfect piece for the missing puzzle.
That's exactly what I was getting at. Like it was a perfect layup, alley oop to you, from tall guy to tall guy. But I would concur with both of what you said with Justin, how you answered it, and Scott, that it's only going to evolve into more retail. I mean, more of an online customer centric experience, and it's similar to with Bev Everything, which I'm one of the founders of, co-founder John Ellis was a founder of it, but when people say, well, why would you partner and join a Bev Everything? And it's because at some point, you can believe what you want, but you're going to see more hybrids and you're going to see more electric vehicles. Now, it might not be in your area just yet, but at some point, the adoption is going to get better and better. And so for those dealers that are trying to be prepared, you have to start now. You don't wait till it gets 50% adoption, 60% adoption to get ready for how people want to drive, whether electric, hybrid, or ICE. And it's the same thing in this conversation. You don't want to wait 3 years from now when 60 to 70% of people, this is how they shop. Like they don't shop traditionally just walking in. Like again, going back to my 15-year-old son, I don't see him and all his friends going in blind to a dealership or going in just with no research done. Nobody does that. He's going to want to have a lot of his stuff done, and he already knows the first 2 or 3 vehicles he wants to buy. He's not even talking about test driving stuff. So the point that I'm bringing it to as we wrap up is sometimes we don't need to make decisions for our business to take care of today. Sometimes we need to make decisions for our business to take care of the future. Like your business 12 months from now, 3 years from now, it's pretty cool if you're doing some of the things that we're talking on this call, like in an easy, simplified insurance verification process. So then that way, 12 months from now, 3 years from now, dealers are still trying to figure it out. They're just now getting into it. And you could be those stores that are saying, man, we've been doing this for years. You're already on to augmented reality in 5 years. You're on to whatever the next big thing is, while people are still trying to figure out how to make a phone call to verify insurance still. Maybe it'll be a
Change is
text
hard.
message.
Yeah, change is hard. People are scared. They think
Yeah,
that if I change this process, that customer, it's more friction because I'm doing it for them, and that's one of the things we've heard. I'm doing it for them, and there's a segment of the population that, and I think at the end of the day, it's you have to take them through that journey along with you. Like you're saying, is don't be afraid of change, embrace it. And
yeah,
I think you hit a nugget before that someone's not said to me, but it really resonated with me. Is you know you can explain. You don't have to, it's not about taking credit for your innovation or your but it's about educating them as to why these things are the way that they are. And I think people will respect that it's for their benefit and safety,
yes.
right? It's for their benefit. It is like customers want to do things themselves. People are like, oh no, they want white glove. That's yes and no. What they want is instantaneous and for it to be done. And people are willing to do a lot more things than you give them credit for in the spirit of instantaneousness. To take away 30 to 45 minutes of a phone call for a 30-second thing, guess what someone's going to do? Even if they didn't know how the first time, they're going to figure it out in 2 seconds, right? The 80-year-olds are on Facebook. Look at the Facebook population. They know how to use Facebook better than I do. Come on. They can't do this? They can.
It's too
Yeah.
easy. It's too easy, but it's
Too easy.
easier not to do it. That's my line. I always say, hey, man,
I like
this is
that.
easy. This business is easy. However, it's easier to not do these things. And that's why so many things get swept underneath the rug. Were you going to say something, Scott?
Nope. He covered it all.
All right. Well, so we'll bring it to a close. So I always want to make sure we leave with, for those of you that do want to learn more, hop on a call with Scott and Justin, or either or both. I want to give them a chance to let you know how they can get connected, and also obviously in the comments if this is on YouTube, and then within the community you'll have access to all that information as well. But just so they know, Scott, how do they get in touch with you, and then Justin, how do they get in touch with you, or whatever the next steps would be?
The easiest is directly on my personal cell, and I don't mind sharing it with your community, Duran. It's 941-713-4976. So 941-713-4976. Or find me on LinkedIn, Scott Trainer. That's Trainor.
Yep.
All right,
And the best way to get a hold of me, Justin Silver, is come to motives.com, go to the contact us page. All my contact information is there, including my LinkedIn and email. But there's plenty of places to reach out as well and ask for more information on our website at checkmydriver.ai. And I'm so excited. This is really awesome. I really appreciate you inviting us on here today.
Yeah, it was great. It was a blast for me as well, and I know the community enjoys it because we learned something. I learned a lot. We've got a ton of notes over here to my right, and then we'll have some additional resources that Scott will give me as well, so that you all will have that. So, as always, thank you all. Thank you, Justin and Scott, for sharing your time with me and with us, and for everybody watching, thank you as well. Until the next time, take care and let's keep it going.